Angel Hare. Do you remember this YouTube series found on the channel The East Patch? Because I sure do. But to give you a quick refresher, the series is about a main character named Jonah who lost a good amount of his memories from his childhood, and only after discovering an old VHS tape about a cartoon called Angel Hare was when he started to recall his past. In his past, he had memories of actually communicating with the character named Angel Gabby, who acted as his guardian angel and who gave him advice. As for the reason why his memories were gone, I believe it's because Gabby took them from him in order to protect him, so he could have a relatively normal life. However, Jonah obviously doesn't want to forget about his friend anymore, and soon discovered a way to communicate with her again through live streams. It was very wholesome until suddenly Gabby went missing due to her desire to help other children by using the streaming side of technology, which caused her to get trapped. But luckily Zag, a friend of Gabby, helped Jonah rescue her, and now the three of them, including Francis and Francine, are working together to help others in need. And in the finale, there was a loading screen which likely hinted to the fact that there was more to come. This was all that we covered in my video about the series, and since then, obviously there's more. We've seen tapes, we've seen cases, and now it's time to see discs. It is a journey about healing and reconnecting, and if you want to check out the series beforehand, the links are in the description, but if you already watched it and you just want to hear my thoughts, then sit back, relax, get a snack, and as always, my name is Rip Estrella. Let's explore. Disc 1, Cast Down. The video opens with a message from a person explaining how it must be strange to hear from them since they haven't kept in touch. I'm assuming this must be a person who once knew Jonah. Speaking of which, since Jonah commonly uses text in his videos to share his thoughts, the person creating this video is doing the same. We then see a disc for Hyrax and the Rocks, a game our narrator played as a kid and never stopped playing since, but they'll stop running it soon and get rid of it for good. But first, they want to show something to Jonah. And just like how Jonah showed comparisons between the original Angel Hare series and what he experienced as a kid, our narrator is going to show the original gameplay versus what he's experiencing too. And pay no mind to the person in the corner, it's a let's play that they pulled from the internet to make this comparison. Now, the key difference that our narrator experienced with this game was the fact that the characters had voices, and in general, everything was different. They then explained how this game was almost like an escape for them, and even a way to vent about past grudges. And suddenly, we see a character in the game with the name Jonah saying hello to someone named Segan, who's likely the name of our narrator. Speaking of which, Segan then explains how they attempted to get rid of this disc in a variety of ways, however things only seem to be getting worse. And since they've seen Jonah's videos and know that Jonah has experience with this unusual situation, he wanted to seek out Jonah to see if he could possibly do something. Segan then wishes Jonah luck, and he specifically states that he's an old alibi, which is interesting because if you remember back to the beginning of the series, Gabby instructed a younger Jonah to go to his friend's house in order to have an alibi and to also escape his abusive father, meaning this person was Jonah's friend in the past. We then back away from the recording and Jonah pulls out the game disc that was mentioned as the others watched from their respective monitors. Gabby was the first to speak up and she seemed hesitant and told Jonah to wait. The video then ends with the credits, but before we proceed forward, let me throw in my first 2 cents. Since Segan contacted Jonah due to the fact that Jonah has experience with a type of media that acts different from the norm, this obviously means that Segan also has a guardian angel companion, but because Segan seems quite stressed about the situation, there's clearly something wrong. These companions are meant to be friends and even mentors, so what's going on with this one? Could they be evil? Could they be misunderstood? In order to find out, let's now proceed forward. Disc 2, Difficult Settings. In this video, Jonah confirms that he was friends with Segan when he was younger, however they lost touch with each other, but after getting sent that video, Jonah attempted to contact Segan, but he refused to pick up. So Gabby was the one to share some information about the game. But first, as we know, Gabby and Zag in the past used cartoons aired on television to communicate with others, but now they use streaming platforms. This is important to mention because it means this new character, Kamael, uses video games as their form of media to communicate. And in a video game, there's a lot more interactive elements, but they do require a lot of puzzle solving, and unlike television shows, there's no breaks such as commercials unless the player pauses, but technically the game is still running. Gabby and Zag then confirmed that it's been a while since they last heard from Kamael, and Jonah suggested playing the game, to which Zag initially rejected due to the fact that the video Segan sent them said that the game was acting wonky now. But Gabby isn't afraid and wants to proceed forward, so Zag was eventually persuaded. After all, they have to see if Kamael is okay or not, and luckily it won't hurt traversing this new media. However, because it's different from what they're used to, it can be pretty complicated and potentially dangerous. However, Gabby's adamant that Kamael won't hurt them, and Jonah wants to help this new friend, so they inserted the disc and proceeded to play. How exciting! The video also ends here, and before we proceed forward, I'm going to say this right now. Video games are obviously complicated and can have a variety of branching pathways, puzzles, game mechanics, and characters. Due to this fact, there's so many elements to juggle, and remember when they mentioned that it's more difficult to get a break when using this type of media? Kamael or Cam might be overworking themselves, and this could be the reason why the game might be running a little strangely, and also the reason why Cam hasn't gotten the chance to speak with the other angels too. Cam is prioritizing the game way too much, and maybe the story being told as well. Not only that, but they've been around Siegen for years, so that connection is another factor to why they might be so invested inside that game world. These are just small things to keep note of. In order to find out, let's proceed forward. Let's go. Disc 3, Reformatting. As we can probably guess, getting into this game was strange for the crew, but they pushed forward regardless, and firstly, they had to pick characters from the starting menu in order to blend in. Gabby chose the rogue, while Zag chose the paladin. They then proceeded to meet the king, to which the king seemed relieved that they've returned to help. Also, Jonah has a sneaking suspicion that the game is adapting to them, and he can't help but reflect and wonder if he was a good friend or not. Regardless, they needed to focus, and the king gave them the quest to find the jester to save the princess. However, Zag doesn't want to play the game and just wants Cam to speak to them directly, but that doesn't seem to be happening, so they decided to skip parts of the game and jump straight towards the cave where the jester could be found. And real quick, you know how Gabby and Zag have their own partners in their shows, Francis and Francine? In this game, apparently Cam's partner or assistant is the jester, so they might have some useful information, but unexpectedly, they're not in the cave. The video ends with this discovery, and what a cliffhanger. It makes you wonder, what happened to them? Did Cam do something to them? Or are they just elsewhere? In order to find out, let's keep going. Disc 4, Disconnecting. It opens with Jonah stating the fact that Gabby and Zag's shows reflect them, which means the game is a reflection of Cam, and from what little he gathered, it seems lonely, meaning Cam might be lonely. But back to the jester problem. The group are surprised to see that Francois is not there, and could only assume they're gone due to the state of the game. There's empty streets, missing assets, and overall, as mentioned before, it's lonely and also dreary. Regardless, the crew continued to follow the tutorial they found online and went to the forest, but unexpectedly, Gabby and Zag didn't follow Jonah to the next area. This of course startled Jonah, but once he returned to the cave, that's when they all were back together. It turns out the two didn't stop following him, they just couldn't follow him, meaning Jonah has to continue on with the journey alone if they want to proceed forward. So Gabby then tells Jonah that Cam has a lot more control running this game, which makes them have a different mindset from Gabby and Zag, meaning Cam is more used to making the player go down their designed path, and according to Zag, Cam is a bit of a manipulator? But anyways, Gabby tells Jonah to be careful, and Jonah trusts Gabby's words and proceeds forward alone. But first Francine throws in her 2 cents about what could have happened to Cam's assistant. They were either fired or they quit. The video then ends, and if Cam's assistant did quit, what made them quit? Did Cam do something that provoked Francois to walk away, or was Cam just abandoned by their assistant? And here's another big problem that comes with the jester being gone. According to the game's plot, the jester is an important character, and now that they're gone, it could have ruined a lot of stuff and made the game pretty glitchy and buggy. Without this important character, can the game even be completed properly? And also, the complete loneliness must be unbearable for Cam, right? The answers will obviously be in the next following videos, so let's keep going. Disc 5, Fail State. The video opens with Gabby telling Jonah that the game will lead him, and that he just needs to be careful as he follows. The quest for the princess isn't important, and Jonah realized that Siegen gave him this game for a reason, so Jonah decided to see this through the lens of Siegen, and asked about himself. He asked about Jonah. This question made the character we saw in the beginning of the disc series appear, saying that Jonah is finally taking responsibility, but it's too late, and they're not surprised that Jonah is taking shortcuts, because he always does, and he must be used to cheating. Then game character Jonah decided to just let them skip straight towards the end, and we see the princess, but she explains that the game wasn't truly beaten due to the lack of effort and other things Jonah missed. The princess then said she assumed Jonah came here to prove he was a good friend, but again, the lack of points is telling. Jonah then argues that he wasn't here to get points, then proceeded to ask about Siegen, and explains how he just wants to find out how he can help an old friend, to which the game tells Jonah he's not Siegen's friend. Jonah just used Siegen to get out of his home and to play his games. This apparently hurt Siegen, and he suffered for so long, and is constantly seeking out others' approval because of Jonah. Jonah, however, refuses to believe this is about him, then asks about Kamael, knowing they've been here the whole time, and this is when the game completely changes, and the creepy portrait, who's obviously Kamael, explains that the game is more fun when you're actually playing it, to which Jonah says that he isn't here to play the game. Kamael then says Jonah is still just using people, and Jonah argues that he doesn't use his friends. Kamael doesn't believe this, however, and points out that Jonah feels guilty around the others, and that he still uses his time with them as an escape. Kamael also mentions how Jonah always needs their permission and even believes that they're too good for him. This made Jonah pause for a moment before accepting that he does use his friends, but they also use his help too. Things are different now, and they can lean on each other for support because they're good friends. Gabby and Zag then managed to join Jonah, and they were relieved to see each other, but they were still on high alert until suddenly a congratulations screen took over, and later the princess appeared to congratulate Jonah by saying he confronted his worries, gained confidence, and became a good friend. This surprising turn of events made Jonah realize that Kamael wasn't hiding. They knew Jonah's fears and made him face them, and Kamael was the world, the characters, everything. Kamael was the game. I mean, we could have guessed this already, but anyways. Gabby and Zag then abruptly got kicked from the game, but they luckily entered the Angel Hare series, and of course they're not gonna let things end like this. They soon started up the game from the beginning again, to which Kamael does the same intro, but the group isn't going to allow that same script to be played and told Kamael how worried they are. This did seem to throw off Cam for a moment, but they continued on with the opening script. So Gabby had to talk over them and demanded to speak with the real Cam, and Zag suggested for Gabby just to pull them out, which she does. And let's just say, Cam wasn't happy about this at all. The video ends here, and before we proceed forward, it's honestly fascinating how Cam uses the game to show people their deepest conflicts in hopes to help them face their problems and push through, which could be a good thing, but because they're in so much control, it also feels a little unfair and intrusive. Despite what I assume to be their relatively good intentions, it can be a bit much, and it doesn't even allow the person that they're helping to go at their own pace. Cam might believe that they know what's best, but no one should have complete control over another person's journey with healing. Speaking of which, it also seems like Cam has their own issues to deal with, but they don't seem to focus on their own needs, and because of this lack of self-care and only prioritizing helping others, it makes them honestly come across as blunt and, well, abrasive. I'll go into more detail soon, so let's move on to the final disc video. Disc 6. Save and Continue. They're all in the Angel Hare world, and as I mentioned before, Cam does not look happy at all, but they eventually started to talk, and they understand why Segan wanted to throw the game away, but they don't understand why Segan went to Jonah. This hostility confused Jonah, so Cam explains how Jonah wasn't the nicest kid, and Gabby argues that Jonah was just going through a lot, to which Cam said everyone is, and that's why they were helping Segan. They wanted to teach Segan about assertiveness and boundaries, and a method that seemed to have worked was by playing the villain in the game, but that just caused a rift in their relationship, and Gabby asked Cam if they ever stopped and wondered if all Segan really needed was just a friend. Jonah then asked about what happened to Francois, Cam's friend and assistant, to which Cam explains that they don't know when it happened, but they left. Gabby then told Cam that they need to stop neglecting themselves, but Cam doesn't want to hear it, and soon asked Jonah if he at least feels strong about his relationships after winning the game. Cam is adamant that their strategy works, but Jonah then points out that Cam will always have to lose for this to work, which made Cam go silent. Gabby then tells Cam that the game is too broken now, and that they sacrificed too much to continue fixing other people's problems, but again, Cam does not want to hear it, and says that they aren't like the kids that they help, so they don't want to hear Gabby's advice. So Jonah chimes in and says that they don't have to accept their help, but at least they should stop ignoring their own problems. Cam immediately got defensive after this comment, and Jonah continues by telling Cam that they never gave themselves a break, and also mentioned how abrasive they are. So Jonah tasks Cam with their own quest to help themselves for once. Cam was a bit stunned by this, but soon returned to their game, and they were a bit hesitant, but they don't want to drive anyone else away, so they agreed to try their best, and maybe one day they'll return and be a good friend. And with that, their game slowly shuts down, but it doesn't turn off completely, likely to demonstrate that Kamael is finally taking a break, and Jonah looks down to his phone and gives Segan a call. And as the credits roll, we see the two meet outside. We don't hear their conversation, but they chat with each other, and it seems like they might re-spark that old friendship of theirs. The video then ends, and it's now time for me to collect my thoughts and share what I believe the deeper meaning of all of this was. So let's go. Conclusion. Truthfully, Cam has a bit of a savior complex. Speaking of which, remember when Gabby got trapped in the streaming world because she wanted to help other children who needed her like Jonah? Same issue here, however, Cam was more destructive towards himself. You see, Gabby accidentally put herself in danger because she lacked knowledge about the streaming world and got stuck because of it, while Cam intentionally ignores the harm they actively put themselves through. And here's the thing, Cam is just as protective over Segan as Gabby is with Jonah. However, the two take wildly different approaches with their kids. Jonah grew up with an abusive father figure, and Gabby was just the friend he needed to protect him. Segan, on the other hand, thought he made friends with Jonah, but then discovered that Jonah only hung out with him to get out of his house, which hurt Segan. Obviously, Jonah didn't mean any harm with this, but it still hurt regardless, and when they lost touch, it was likely more salt in the wound. So Cam enters the picture, and to prevent Segan from getting hurt again, Cam teaches Segan about assertiveness and boundaries by playing the villain and allowing Segan to vent out his frustrations. But this was an unhealthy relationship and a destructive solution. Segan needed a friend like how Jonah had Gabby, not a method of lashing out. This cycle of hostility and venting wasn't doing Segan any good, and it was honestly toxic by the sounds of it. Speaking of which, Cam's assistant Francois likely left due to how destructive this relationship was getting, and now that Cam is truly alone, it only led to them becoming more toxic, but towards themselves. Loneliness isn't great, and after playing the villain role for so long, it must have messed them up quite a bit. And sure, they had good intentions with wanting to help people overcome their problems, but they're noticeably forceful with their tactics and quite pushy. For example, when helping Jonah, Cam knew what was going on in Jonah's head, which is incredibly handy to have this type of insight. However, Cam doesn't know what Jonah truly needs to overcome this issue without leaving a bad taste in his mouth. And because Cam doesn't know healthy methods of helping others, it means they don't know how to properly help themselves either. It took an intervention for Cam to realize that what they were doing wasn't healthy and that they really needed time to relax and reflect. They still have the potential to be a good friend, but they first must be good to themselves before they can even consider being that friend others can turn to for support. With all of that being said, I believe the overall message of this season is that you can't help others until you help yourselves first. Not only that, but don't sacrifice your own health for the sake of others. Cam became the villain, believing that's what others needed, and that went horribly for them. So don't be like Cam. Be like Cam when they decided to finally take care of themselves. Okay? As for Jonah, I'm not surprised that he still has these lingering feelings of guilt for his friendship with Gabby and the others. Sometimes he's teetering between being too reliant on her, but now that he's reconnecting with Segan, maybe he'll get better at not needing her too much. Of course, they'll still be close friends, and that bond will never go away, but it will be a much more relaxed friendship. In general, this series seems to be about healing now that I think about it. I love these wholesome stories, and I really liked Cam's character because they remind me so much of a dungeon master, and the voice acting is just, perfect. And again, if you haven't watched it, please do, the links are in the description. Check it out, bruh. With that being said, my name is Repestrella. Don't forget to like, subscribe, do that funny little notification thing, maybe check my other social medias, leave a comment, and I better not catch you dying on me. Goodbye!